Hey everyone, this is Daniel. I just want to apologize in advance for the audio quality in this episode. This conversation was actually recorded long before we ever launched the podcast. Up until now, we haven't been posting episodes in quite the same order that we recorded them, but we're almost caught up now, so the sound quality will get better soon, I promise. Just hang in there.
Welcome to Offscreen. This week we're reading Gay Kid and Fat Chick by Burnham. Two high school misfits become costume vigilantes and take out their frustrations on the students who bullied them throughout high school.
So I guess for once I know more about this writer than you do. It seems like you're always the one doing this part, but I'm not an expert on Bo Burnham by any means. I just have seen
More than I am.
I've seen a few of his shows, not in person, but he started out on YouTube and did a bunch of songs, which are usually like really dirty, and got really popular, and now does, I guess you could call it stand-up shows, but like I said, it incorporates a lot of music, and he's also really big on wordplay. He has a very large vocabulary, and he's really good at crafting clever puns and just speaking really fast. He has some like rap songs, and he's really talented, and he seems really smart. So I was excited to read this, and I think it's pretty well written.
I would say so.
I think it shows. Maybe not some of the vocabulary and the wordplay. That's not really here, but there's I think some strong voice in the characters, and a lot of the same sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Irreverent? Yeah. Irreverence, definitely.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't know he was even trying to like pursue screenwriting at all. I don't know if he just did this on a whim or what, but
Well, he's been in movies, right? He was in a Judd Apatow movie, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. I think he's had smaller like bit parts and other things too.
Yeah. This script appeared on the 2013 Blacklist,
right?
Which is how we found it.
Yeah. All right. Well, should I get into
the
summary?
Yeah.
Okay. High school seniors Maggie and Alex are each other's only friends. Maggie plays on the field hockey team, where her large size gives her an advantage as the goalie. Alex puts his enthusiastic, if effeminate, dance moves to use as the school mascot, a giant beaver. Despite helping to win the game, Maggie's teammates constantly make fun of her for being fat, and things only get worse when a nude selfie of Maggie is leaked to the whole school. In retaliation for her humiliation, Maggie dons Alex's beaver costume and goes on a rampage, assaulting several of the female field hockey players in the locker room. Alex, inspired by her act of vigilante justice, creates his own alter ego named Gold Bitch, complete with fake breasts and a motorcycle helmet. The anti-bullying duo make their debut at a party where Maggie discovers that someone has posted her naked picture all over the bathroom walls. After beating up the culprits, they announce their services to the rest of the high school partygoers. Alex sets them up with a fake Facebook account, and immediately the Beaver and Gold Bitch are flooded with requests from downtrodden classmates to take revenge on their bullies. Maggie and Alex relish their duties at first. It even gives them the confidence to pursue their own respective high school crushes. Maggie has her eye on Derek, a brooding metalhead who invites her to see his band, while Alex befriends a lacrosse player named Nathan, who he's sure is in the closet. But crime fighting starts to get in the way. Maggie is forced to bail on Derek several times, and soon she's missing field hockey games too. When she finally does make it in time to win another one for the team, a college talent scout offers her the chance at a full-ride scholarship, if she can just be more reliable. As a result, Maggie's about to give up on being the Beaver altogether, until she hears from Derek that he himself used to be bullied by none other than Nathan, Alex's crush. It's about the same time that Alex finally draws Nathan out of his shell. They make out briefly in a janitor's closet, then leave separately and discreetly. But while Alex is privately celebrating, Nathan is suddenly confronted by the Beaver. Retaliating on her boyfriend's behalf, Maggie gives Nathan a good beating. Inevitably, Alex learns what's happened. He confronts Maggie about it. What Nathan did to Derek happened years ago, he says. Nathan has changed since then. Maggie refuses to listen, but now Derek is suspicious too. First he tells her about his bully, next thing he knows Nathan is attacked by the beaver. Did she put him up to this? No, Maggie admits she is the beaver. Shocked, Derek breaks up with her on the spot. Now abandoned by her best friend and her boyfriend alike, Maggie tries to work alone for a while, taking increasingly spiteful and petty requests from students and creating an endless cycle of violence and fear in her own school. The beaver makes what will be its final appearance at the Halloween dance. But this time it isn't Maggie beneath the costume, it's Derek. Hoping to put an end to the violence, he turns himself in. Maggie confesses in an effort to save him, then Alex confesses to being Gold Bitch. All three are arrested. The authorities soon learn that Derek had nothing to do with it. Maggie and Alex, on the other hand, are expelled, forced to return to school for one more try at senior year. Hopefully, this time, they'll learn to handle their bullies without becoming one of them. The end.
Cool. So yeah, what was your impression overall?
I liked it overall. The end got to be kind of a wreck, and it ended a little abruptly, I thought. But I feel like I'm saying that a lot about screenplays, and I should probably just be taking them on more of a... I should take more of an holistic approach, I guess. Oh. And if I'm doing that, I would say I liked this screenplay, and it had a lot of heart. And I liked the two main characters. They both had really strong voices. And it felt like Bo Burnham was writing this with a lot of conviction about like what's right and wrong in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I feel like the characters were both really well drawn, the two main characters. And it was funny and irreverent, like you said. Did you say that while we were recording?
Yeah, that was the word.
And yeah, it kind of, I don't know, goes off the rails a little bit towards the end. But,
yeah,
I think it's hard to stick the landing. It's like gymnastics.
I think he was good at really highlighting or emphasizing like some of the more action-oriented plot points. Like the first time that Beaver and Gold Bitch make their appearance at that party, there's a lot of like kind of flair in the writing to that part where... when they leave, they're like blasting music in the car, and like when they're getting suited up for the first time beforehand, there's like a lot of quick cuts of them getting into costume and
right,
sort
there's an energy to it, I guess.
Yeah, that all felt really good, but some of the more like emotional or like thematically driven stuff I felt like was weak, which I think is why the ending in particular felt a little bit messy, because it was a lot of stuff with, like Alex and Maggie having a fight over the future of their crime fighting duo, and her breaking up with Derek, and like a lot of these more emotional scenes were handled kind of in a sloppy way, I thought. Kind of rushed a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Like the scene where she breaks up with Derek, they're just like shopping in a gas station for candy bars, and he more or less calls her out. He like...
Well, isn't this immediately after a imitation beaver shows up? And
that was something I left out of the summary, but yeah. These gangs of people dressed as beavers start terrorizing the town. Not just the school, but like they're just flagrantly committing crimes.
Which is important, because it was... like her vigilantism or whatever inspired copycats.
But anyway, yeah, like the part where she is breaking up with him, or he's about to break up with her, rather. That's right when the first copycat strikes, and yeah, it felt too convenient for those two things to be happening at the same time. For one thing, but also it was kind of a throwaway scene at first. Yeah, they were just like shopping for candy bars, and then suddenly this dramatic thing comes up, and it didn't feel organic. It just felt like he picked a conversation that he needed to happen, and then he just picked a random place that he was going to make it happen, and then he just combined them.
I kind of like how it was so ordinary at first, and then the scene was injected with something much more dramatic, and that was like the opportunity for a bigger moment on their like personal scales.
I think I'd be more okay with it if I felt like this was going for more of a naturalistic feel, but sure. It's really not for the most part. Yeah. It's mostly very exaggerated, and like I would equate the tone to like Mean Girls,
Okay, but that still has, yeah, I guess it's a heightened
Yeah.
reality, but it still is like grappling with real high school emotions and that sort of
Well,
stuff.
sure, yeah, but that was the thing I was gonna say also about earlier in the screenplay when she is just starting to um, don the beaver outfit and take revenge on people. It seemed so transparent to me. Like I was frustrated that nobody figured her out. Like one day her naked picture is leaked to the school.
Yeah.
And then I think it's even that same day. It's not even the next
Same,
day.
yeah.
She goes on this rampage, and everyone's like suddenly just like, "Who is this person?" It's
I
like,
think
come
that's
on.
suspension of disbelief that we just have to
That
roll with.
that was too much for me. I felt like
I mean, come on.
it-
Like, it's high school, so at the very most, there's 3,000 students. At the
Okay.
very, very most. So it's not like that many. And they are, at least according to the screenplay, seen as these outcasts. And a very, like, visually striking pair, a very big girl and a very, like, slender guy. And then those same two people, like, there are superheroes that
Yeah.
appear with the same dimensions.
So
like,
then here's my solution.
it's obvious, yeah.
I just wanted it to like roll with that and make it into a joke, like a joke how obvious it is, and yet nobody's catching them. Like that would have been sort of a joke between just the writer and the audience, but I'd be fine with that if he just would hang a lantern on it and admit like, look, I know this is very obvious, but for the sake of the story, these kids are just completely oblivious to who they are.
Right, but I think there was something to the fact that all of the characters in the movie just assumed that the beaver was a dude. Like couldn't even conceive that it could be a woman.
Yeah.
And I think the screenplay does a pretty good job with toying with that and like kind of the assumptions that people make that are like societally trained.
Yeah, I think that's true. That was a strong point, or like that was one of the stronger things about this screenplay. A lot of the gender role stuff, I felt like it was commenting on that a lot, or playing with those assumptions a lot. Like the beaver costume, she's obviously really like big and hulking when she's wearing it, but then there's like a voice modulator thing in the costume that makes her voice sound very high and squeaky, and then Alex's costume, even though he's dressed as a woman basically, has a voice modulator that makes him sound much deeper. That was kind of a fun twist. I don't know where I was going with that, but I thought that was clever and fun.
I think that's something the screenplay does do well. I kind of have I don't know, maybe not a problem, but I question whether or not it makes sense to kind of realign like blame like away from the bullies and then place it onto the two kids that have been picked on their entire lives.
You think that the movie is trying to shift the blame onto
I mean, I think
Maggie and Alex?
I think the screenplay very clearly villainizes what they're doing, like makes it a point to show that they are not they're not doing the right thing by terrorizing their classmates in ways that they've been terrorized, which isn't an unfair thing to say.
Right.
Like violence often begets violence. But I think in context, I guess, societally, I think it's would be kind of remiss to implicitly exonerate the people with, like, quote unquote power who are picking on the less powerful.
I don't know. I think you can.
It was very convoluted, but
Well, I see what you're saying, but I mean, I think you can still condemn what Alex and Maggie were doing without exonerating the bullies themselves.
right, and it's not an explicit exoneration or anything, but like of all the stories to tell and all the ways in which you could have told this story, by choosing to tell it this way, it's making it about like the downsides of vigilantism as opposed to the day in day out abuse that these people suffer. And I don't think it was an explicit like intent of his, but I don't really know that necessarily matters. I mean, even like the dumbest movies impart theme, like the Transformer movies are dumb, meaningless movies, but they're still incredibly sexist and offensive. And the fact that Michael Bay doesn't think of that makes it even worse, probably, because it just shows how ingrained it is. And I don't mean to compare this to that movie at all, because this one is very in tuned and it is sympathetic to its characters. Yeah.
I still think the message had more to do with hopefulness, which is just barely alluded to. It's just the principal at the end is lecturing them and says something about this, but I felt like that was really the heart of it, was him saying that, they did this because... I want to read this line, actually.
It's something to the effect of... Well, yeah, you find it. But it's something to the effect of, you could have just stuck it out another year and then had a great scholarship to play field hockey. But I don't know, I find that sort of problematic, too. Why should they have to stick it out a year? It's easy for the principal to tell another person to endure all of this bullshit that they're suffering, every single day. It doesn't mean it's right for them to suffer that.
Okay.
And it's presumptuous. It's presumptuous to make that request. But yeah, go ahead.
Let me just read the line, and then we'll talk about what we think it's trying to say. Because I thought this was really the crux of it. So the principal is lecturing Maggie and Alex after them being expelled. So he says to Maggie, "When your picture was circulated, I felt terrible for you, Maggie. I did. When that happened, I knew that you were going to be in for a rough year, and you knew that too. But what you didn't know is that the next year would pass, and that the next one would come and be different, and then another year would pass, and the next one would come and be different still. In 10 years of working with high schoolers, that misunderstanding has done the most damage. It's hopelessness. Hopelessness and short-sightedness. Your life wasn't ruined when that picture spread. It wasn't, but now it may be. You thought you had nothing to lose, right? You did. You had a scholarship, that's gone. You had a clean record, that's gone. Being the victim of bullying or ridicule is terrible and is unfortunate, but retaliating in the way you did is cowardly and shameful. You two were never heroes. You hurt your classmates, you scared them, you solved nothing. Do you understand that?" And then they apologize. But that hopefulness, or the hopelessness, I guess, is what he's talking about. That's the crux of it for me, is that he's trying to say that what they were doing was not only wrong, but it was misguided in the sense that this is something that is going to get better. And I guess this doesn't sound like a good message now that I'm saying it, but they needed to see the long view, and that they were going to get through this. Kind of like they were saying at the beginning of the screenplay, they just had to stick it out for senior year, and then they would be in college and things would be better.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess... that's definitely a hopeful... It's definitely a positive message that things can get better.
And
I think in this paragraph, I think where the principal really misses the mark is that he begins it with, "When your picture was circulated, I felt terrible for you, Maggie." But that misses the entire point, that it wasn't just the picture. He should have felt terrible for Maggie long before that, because Maggie's been picked on her entire time at his school.
I think he knows that.
Right, but I don't know. To me, that comes across as he's just acknowledging the fact that it's rough for her when this picture circulated, ignoring the fact that there is a much wider spread problem with bullying in his school.
I don't know. I think that's a little picky.
It's endemic.
Yeah, I think you're being a little picky. I like what he's saying, and maybe I'm just sympathetic to this because it's something I think about a lot, is people being kind of short-sighted and living very much in the present. Mm-hmm. And I think probably high schoolers are even more prone to that. You think that high school is the world when you're in high school. That's what I think he's trying to say here, and I think he's just trying to give them some more perspective. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to say, though, that I do think this screenplay, a lot of what it has going for it, and I'm not sure how to describe the way he does this, but it seems like he's very good at describing acts of bullying or people getting picked on in a way that's simultaneously really sad, because you can tell it's real, this is stuff that really happens, but simultaneously funny, and really funny in a dark way. that was one of the strongest things about it for me. These people calling each other terrible things and doing really awful stuff to each other. Like there's one part where a kid that he requests the Beaver to help beat up some bullies for him. He was like at some retreat or like camp trip with his teammates. I forget. It was like the archery team, and like I don't even want to go into what they did to him. Actually, it's really disgusting. Yeah. I'm going to leave it up to people to find the script and read it, yeah.
And that is really that's really the point of these podcasts, right? For people to read the scripts
I guess so.
And have some sort of engagement with the material as they listen to us talk about it, and then have like a back and forth. But to go back to what you were saying before, my first note while reading this was that teenagers can be so mean. And that's true.
Yeah.
They can.
And Bo Burnham seems so like sympathetic towards that.
He does.
And in the very first description is of Maggie, and it says Maggie Higgins, 17, obese and beautiful. And it's like right off the bat, I'm like, oh.
It's kind of like blunt. Well, it's definitely blunt in a way that like could be kind of like mocking, but it doesn't really come across that way.
When I remember when you texted me that first line when you read it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what you were texting it to me for, what you were trying to say. I assumed you were reacting to it in the same way I did, which was that like, wow, that's a powerful way to begin. Like that's really saying a lot in very few words. Like he's making a statement about it. Yeah, he's like standing up for this character despite what everyone else is making fun of her for.
Definitely.
I also find it kind of interesting, and this has nothing to do with the screenplay, really. I don't know if Bo Burnham went to college. I assume he did.
Him. I don't think he did.
No? Okay. I was just going to say...
And he was super bummed when he was like touring the world, or touring the country as a comedian, and all of his like friends were like at parties in college.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad. I was just going to say, if he didn't go to college, that makes sense. It's kind of interesting to me that he chooses this, and I think it's kind of smart of him to know what he does and doesn't have experience in, and he writes what he knows, which is high school, which is the last time he was in school, and that, to him, kind of is the world.
Well, and I think one of the characters mentions, too, like, it's easier to kind of be yourself and be accepted for who you are in college, where you have a lot more agency, a lot more control over, like, where you go, who you surround yourself with, what interests you pursue, whereas high school is often very insular, and you have all the baggage of, like, everyone knows everyone's family. I mean, I guess it depends on where you're from, but, like, in my suburban experience,
I did feel like some of the adult characters sounded a little childish in this. I think he had a hard time writing things that... That's almost the opposite problem as what I usually see. A lot of times in scripts you'll see stupid, annoying kids who are really precocious and smart and sound like adults. Mm-hmm. But I felt like in this, a lot of the adults still sounded like kids.
Who else was there besides the principal?
So there were the police just briefly at the end when they were arresting everyone, and they, they all start confessing. Like first, Derek's trying to turn himself in as the Beaver, and then Maggie confesses that it's her, and then Alex confesses that he's Gold Bitch, and then the cops just like, okay, whatever, I'll arrest you too, and that struck me as really not realistic sounding. And then
kind of flippant.
Some of I had some principal lines that I thought were kind of silly. He made an announcement at one point saying all 5th period classes are being canceled in lieu of a last-minute assembly in the auditorium. And that's, first of all, not how you use in lieu of, but also just like all classes are being canceled for he admits it's a last-minute assembly. I don't know. That sounded very fake to me.
Administrative, I guess.
And then, and at that same assembly that he calls of all the students, he's like asking that the Beaver come forward and confess. And Alex actually does jump up and yell that it's him. Yeah. And the principal just like laughs it off and is like, no, come on now, really. And
see, I thought that was kind of going back to how no one could conceive of the Beaver being like a woman.
Or, yeah, and, like, by the
Or,
same
like,
token, they couldn't believe that it was this little gay kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't read
Even
it.
though
I
by
didn't
this
read
point
it that way at the
he
time.
was like gold bitch and like kicking ass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't read it that way, but yeah, I guess I see what you mean.
Yeah.
He does say that felt homophobic. Alex says that when
Alex and Maggie are really well drawn characters.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Their friendship felt really real. Really real. That's
Yeah.
stupid, but it felt real, I guess.
Bo Burnham has a song about how everyone in his family thinks he's gay. That was one of his first, like, YouTube songs that got really popular, because, yeah, I guess this was when he was in high school, and he does seem kind of effeminate sometimes, and so he had a whole song about that. So, yeah, I think he can sympathize with Alex's character.
Sure. Oh, I thought it was interesting how Maggie and Alex were much more comfortable, like, during school as themselves once they started being... Once they had adopted their alter egos.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was an interesting thing.
It feels realistic. I feel like that,
yeah.
Like I said in the summary, too, I tried to kind of hit that point. I think it really did build their confidence doing it.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, the fact that they are able to get some sort of agency when previously they didn't have it is, I guess, for them, confidence boosting. Something like that. I feel like I've been bad this podcast. Very
I felt a little off, too. I feel like this was just not one of our best conversations, but I hope
it was interesting.
I hope that doesn't detract from the impression we're giving of the script, because I think it's a fine script. Mm-hmm. It was enjoyable.
Should we get to our...
Yeah, I was trying to steer there, and then you had to call it out. Thought it was a really nice, natural-sounding transition.
Just wanted to make sure you got there. Just wanted to help with the...
Well, we're there now, so what do you think? What's your verdict?
I'd give I want to hear yours first.
I think it's a consider on the script. I'm kind of up in the air on the writer. I think this feels like it may just be the one screenplay he had in him. And since I know, and again, try not to let his, like, what I know about him influence me.
No,
but
I think you have to.
Yeah, I think, like, he doesn't have a career in screenwriting cut out for him, but I think this could be a fine...
But we know he's a talented writer in other respects.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying I don't think I would, like, consider necessarily, like, working with him on something else. I might not... I might pass on the writer, but I think this script is fine.
Interesting.
But I just don't... I don't see him having a lot of other scripts in him.
Okay, see, I would go the other way. I would look at his track record as a writer in other types of writing, I guess, and see that he has had success there. So I would consider the writer, and maybe he writes even better screenplay next time.
Well, I do hope he keeps at it.
Yeah.
But
I think I'd give it... Yeah, I'd teeter between a pass and a consider.
On both?
For the screenplay, and I give the writer a consider.
Oh, okay.
In large part because of what we know about him.
Okay. Next week, we're reading a script called 999 by Matt Cook. A gang of crooked cops plan a major heist that will require them to shoot a fellow officer in order to get away with it.